This is the MrBeast prison, and it has tons of unique escape rooms, with each one being more dangerous than the last, and I will be trying to escape it. The first room was pretty interesting. There was netherrack in the floor, gold blocks in each of the corners, a bookcase in one of the walls, and dripstone on the roof that would fall and kill me if I didn't escape in time. Everything else in the room seemed to be made out of cobbled deep slate, so the first thing I tried to do was break it, but I found that I couldn't. I then decided to try to break the netherrack in the floor, and I found I was actually able to. I figured something could be hidden below it, and since I had limited time, I began breaking each block. And at the last one, I was disappointed to find nothing. I then began looking at the gold blocks. I discovered that one of the blocks was actually missing, and in one of the other corners, the blocks were made out of yellow wool. I grabbed the wool and found behind it there was an item frame containing a redstone comparator. I grabbed the blocks and the comparator and then considered what I could use it for. Nothing immediately came to mind, but then I noticed the cauldron. If liquid is in a cauldron, it actually emits a signal, but since there was nothing in it, it actually wouldn't. I decided to break the bookshelf to see if there was something hidden behind it, but I found there was nothing there. I glanced up at the dripstone, fearing it would come down on me, but then I noticed a water bucket inside of an item frame hidden in the dripstone. It was just out of reach, so I used the wool blocks to grab it, and then I emptied it into the cauldron. I decided to place the comparator facing the wall to see if there was some redstone behind it, and when I placed it, a gold block appeared out of nowhere. I picked it up and remembered that one of the blocks was missing, so I replaced the wool and put the gold block in the missing spot. When I placed it, I heard a click and realized a lever had appeared. I grabbed it and then was unsure where to place it. I had no idea and knew the clock was ticking, so I began testing each of the gold blocks, and finally after a few tries, I found the correct spot and a doorway opened. I immediately entered, and right as I crossed through, I heard the dripstone fall and the door close behind me. I continued on through the hallway, which led me to the nether. There was a portal across from where I entered, as well as lava in the floor. I checked under the lava to see if there was a chest or hidden room, but I found nothing, so I just entered the portal. On the other side, I found myself in a room, but something felt off. I looked at my character in F5 and realized I had shrunk. Just then, a message appeared saying that I would shrink in size every few minutes, and if I didn't escape in time, I would be stuck in here forever and just get smaller and smaller. This scared me, so I quickly got a bearing of what was in the room. There was a TNT block in one of the walls and a mineshaft with a chest. I ran over to the TNT and tried to break it, but found I was unable to. I then checked the furnace, and unfortunately it was empty, but when I checked the chest next to it, I found some arrows. I went over to the mineshaft and opened up the minecart chest, and inside was a flint and steel, but as I was sprinting over to the TNT to go light it, I shrunk once again. I stood by the TNT and thought for a moment. I could try lighting it, but there was no way I would get far enough away from it to not die. I decided to keep searching the room and began checking under the various blocks. I found nothing and once again shrunk. I looked over to the last remaining thing, which was the bed, and because I had shrunk, I could now see under it. I saw an opening, so I began running over there. During the process of running, I once again shrunk, but I was still able to go under the bed. I found that the opening contained a bow and an item frame. I realized that with the flint, I could light the floor up and then shoot the bow and light the TNT. I grabbed the bow and made my way back to the mineshaft so that I was far enough away to not get killed by the explosion. I set the floor on fire and then began shooting, but because I was so small, my arrows were falling short. I aimed way up at the ceiling and shot, and the arrow lit the TNT. It blew up and revealed a hallway, and before I could even think, I grew back to my normal size. I entered the hallway, and as I made my way down it, the walls changed from bedrock to birch planks. Eventually, I reached the end of it and found another wider hallway with a bunch of doors. I decided to enter the first door, and when I opened it, I found another door on the opposite side. But as soon as I opened the other door, I became extremely confused. I saw myself. I walked forward and found myself back in the hallway, but on the other side. I turned around and walked back through and realized it was basically a portal taking me from one door to the other. I decided to go to a different door and found this one was a hallway. I followed it to a stairway, which I began walking up. At the top of the stairs, I found another door, and when I opened it, I found myself back in the hallway once again. I figured one of these doors had to be right, so I just continued on to the door in front of me. This door had a short drop, which I took, and once again, found a door. To no surprise, I found myself in the hallway once again. I walked to the next door, which was just a simple loop that took me back to the same hallway. This left me with one door, which I figured would take me to the next room. I walked through it and found it led me back to the hallway, but it had taken me from where I'd originally first entered the room. I turned around and ran back and realized I was trapped. The place I had entered from was completely gone, and every door just took me back to the same place. I stopped and thought for a moment and then looked down at the carpet. I decided to try to break it, and to my surprise, I found that I could. I began breaking every single piece of carpet and eventually found one above a hole. I peered down into the hole and saw it led to a jungle. I figured I had nothing else to lose, so I dropped down and into the jungle, and when I looked up, I saw nothing. The room wasn't even there. After freaking out, I noticed a pressure plate and decided to hop on it. When I triggered it, a message appeared telling me to reach the beacon before the forest burns down. I saw the beacon and sprinted over to it, and when I reached it, I found there was a sign that told me the pressure plate must be pressed in order for the gateway to be opened. Have you ever wanted to try a Minecraft escape room? Well, luckily for you, OP Legends sponsored this video and put another massive escape room up on their server. The escape room has everything from a huge maze to ice parkour, so you should definitely check it out. The server works on any version between 1.8 and 1.18.1, so just load up Minecraft and connect with the IP plurple.oplegends.com. Once you've connected, run over to the giant prison Neptune logo and click on it. Then, once it's loaded, type /warp escape in chat and you will immediately be thrown into the escape room. If you escape it, you will receive some crate keys, which you can use to unlock some sweet rewards for OP Legends Classic Prison and SMP. Again, a big thank you to OP Legends for sponsoring this video. I realized I needed to place something on the pressure plate to keep it open, so I began looking around. I noticed a platform hovering in the air. I ran under it and saw there was a tree I could climb to reach it. At the top of the tree, there was some simple parkour which I easily completed. There was a pressure plate at the end, and when I stepped on it, I was given a water bucket. I turned around and realized the parkour was gone, so I decided to do a simple water clutch. When I reached the bottom, I dropped the bucket onto the pressure plate and then ran over to the beacon. I saw a tunnel and the leaves had appeared and found a button at the end of it. I pressed it and was teleported. I found I was teleported to a MrBeast burger. I looked around the room and saw two villagers behind the counter. I approached one of them and found they would sell a button for 3 diamond blocks. I walked over to the other villager and noticed 2 iron doors with the words exit above them. I opened the trade menu with the other villager and saw they would sell a diamond block for leaves, 2 pieces of bread, and a steak. I realized that I needed to make a burger in order to get the button, which would allow me to open the door and exit this room. I began looking around the room some more and nothing immediately jumped out to me, so I went on to the restrooms. I checked in the toilet and found nothing, so I looked at myself in the mirror and was surprised to find it was actually working. I decided to break it, and behind it was a hopper containing a piece of bread. I grabbed it and then checked behind the mirror in the other room, and sure enough, there was another piece of bread. I took the bread over to the villager and traded for my first diamond block. I took another look around the room and noticed a hopper hidden under one of the tables. I opened it up and inside was a leaf. I traded it for another diamond block and then was unsure what to do because I still needed to trade for a steak. I decided to see if there was a way behind the counter, and at first I couldn't find one, but then I remembered the trapdoors from earlier and used them to begin crawling through the hole, but unfortunately the villager prevented me from entering because he blocked it. I then turned around around and noticed that one of the chairs was missing from one of the corner tables. I ran over to it and found a hopper, and inside was the steak, which was the final thing I needed to trade. I got the final diamond block and then traded it as well as the other two for the button. I placed the button and then used it to exit the Beast Burger. I went on to the next room, and the moment I entered, I knew what was going on. There were a bunch of glass blocks floating over a massive pool of lava. If I stepped onto the wrong block, it would break and I would plummet into the lava and die. The first thing I tried to do was walk on the concrete that was holding up the glass, but of course it was blocked off by invisible barriers which prevented me from getting on them. Next, I wanted to know what my odds were, so I counted how far it was to the end and then calculated my odds. The chances of me getting on the correct block every single time was 1 in 16,384. I had no idea if I would respawn if I died, and there was no way I would make it just by guessing, so I began looking around. At first, I didn't see anything, but then a hopper caught the corner of my eye. I opened it up, and inside found 10 villager spawn eggs. I figured I could place the villagers onto the glass to see if it would break, so I tested the first block. I carefully placed the villager, and sure enough, the block below it broke, and the villager plummeted to its death. I hopped onto the other block, and fortunately it did not break. I then placed a villager onto the glass in front of me, and it broke. I then did the next block, and surprisingly, it didn't shatter. I decided to punch the villager onto the block in front of it, and it also didn't break. I hopped onto the next block, and then punched the villager once again, which resulted in it breaking the block and falling to its death. I then continued on and made pretty good progress, but right at the final jump, I ran out of villagers. Now, I had a 1 in 2 chance of making it and had no clue which one I should pick, so I just decided to go with my gut, and luckily it was right and I made it safely onto the other side. I continued forward to a doorway which revealed a huge chamber. Halfway up on the opposite wall, there appeared to be a hallway, but I had no way to reach it. I looked around the glass bridge but could not find a single thing. I decided to go back to the doorway, and this time noticed there was an item frame with a slime block. I grabbed it and then figured I was supposed to drop down, place the slime block, and then bounce off of it into the hallway. I decided to just go for it, and luckily I landed safely in the hallway. I walked down it to another room. This room was made out of white concrete, and there was a catwalk near the roof. I noticed a button, and when I pressed it, a bunch of blocks began extending from inside the wall. I realized it was making a parkour pathway to the catwalk, but there was one problem. The pistons would immediately retract back into the wall, meaning you had to be fast, and if there is one thing I'm really bad at, it's Minecraft parkour. I began freaking out, but then noticed a snow block in the corner. I realized it was powdered snow, and I knew I had nothing left to lose, so I dropped down it. I followed a short hallway and was presented with a button. I pressed it, and after a short moment of lagging, I found myself teleported and standing on a massive MrBeast logo that was hovering in the air. A message quickly appeared that read, "The logo will soon explode. Get off of it and to the bunker before it explodes." I quickly ran down the side of the logo, but found just a dead end. The only thing there was a ladder, and now I knew a ladder clutch could theoretically be possible, but I have neither the guts nor the skill to do one, so I simply used it to get back up and try the other side of the logo. After a short drop, I made it all the way to the other end, but found my odds weren't really any better. The ocean was just too far away, and there were no ponds nearby. My only real chance was a single block of water from a villager's farm. I decided to go for it, so I sprinted off of it and lined myself up midair. I barely landed in it, but I was still not safe because I needed to find the bunker. I figured it would be somewhere within the city, so I began running around looking for it. At first I didn't see it, but after reaching some high ground, I spotted it over on an island not far away. I got over to it as fast as I could and then entered it. After a few small drops, I reached the end and found a sign that told me the explosion was fake and the bunker was just a trap.